Hello indie game fans, before we bid adieu to 2020, here are some indie game hidden gems that are pretty good, defined arbitrarily as under 500 Steam reviews, so stick around and you might just discover a cult classic in the making. While the puzzle platformer is one of the most overdone genres in indie games, Evans Remains did impress me for what else than the pixel art. There's a strange mystery afoot as a boy genius goes missing, but years later, a letter written by him gets sent to a girl who now has the objective of resolving this. While the puzzles are not too difficult, the story itself is emotional and worth experiencing, and it's a wonderful, smaller title to kick us off. Always down to check out bullet hell shoot 'em ups, with Maiden and Spell being a very interesting title. I just did a video on shoot 'em ups, and while this shares many of those same elements, it's a 1v1 single screen one of this which doesn't quite fit in that video, so here it is. It's a magical girl bullet hell battler with 8 playable characters and does have a main campaign and story as well. Interestingly, this supports 1v1 multiplayer, which is quite an interesting alternative to your traditional fighting game. The adventure game is a tough sell in 2020, but indie developers continue to carry that legacy forward, with developer Size 5 Games doing just that with Lair of the Clockwork God. This is a follow-up to their previous title, Time Gentlemen Please and Been There Then That, starring the same characters but with a new look and even adds in a platforming aspect. It's well written with a little bit of a LucasArts adventure game feel, which makes it quite a throwback experience. A neat little brawler title is Tonight We Riot, described as unapologetically political by Variety in that it's an anti-capitalism title about destroying the old world in revolution. It's a very 2020 game in more ways than one, exploring ideas that people are coming to grips with as we all examine our own mortality, but it's essentially violent Pikmin as you lead a group of characters to fight against the machine. Cool art, interesting character designs, and even more interesting ideas, this gets a spot on the list.
You need to practice every day, so when the time comes, you will be ready. Trees don't heat back, but your enemies do. They won't spare you, young Chan. A man is responsible for his family, and when I'm gone, you will need to protect our village. Protect them with your life.
For a more straightforward entry, the beat-em-up title 9 Monkeys of Shaolin will be of interest, having a classic tale of revenge and even supporting local co-op, so it's a no-brainer entry for this list given my love of the genre. If you love interesting abstract titles, In Other Waters may be of interest, where you play as an AI guiding a stranded xenobiologist on an alien planet as she searches for her partner. It's quite a minimalistic title in that it's very UI focused, where you uncover various facts about the underwater ecosystem, both flora and fauna, as well as topological and geographical features. Very text heavy as well, but that's where the charm is, and while it may not be for everyone, it's still worth a look in my opinion. One of the most gorgeous entries of the year is Resolution, spelled with 2 I's, and is somewhat of a nightmare to Google. But this action-adventure title features cool looks, an interesting story, challenging bosses and good action. Of course, the comparison will be made to Hyperlight Drifter, and it doesn't quite meet that same mark, but it's a solid entry in the genre and could be worth your time. I have a soft spot for photography games since it's a unique concept, and while I myself am not into the activity in real life, I do nonetheless have an appreciation for it, which is why Penko Park gets a spot. This would be familiar to fans of Pokemon Snap, since it is on rails, where you explore this abandoned wildlife park. It has a self-titled, spooky, cute aesthetic. We are trying to catalogue all of these weird creatures, where there's a guidebook to fill up, which will keep you going. Love the concept, so more like this, please. While Arthurian legend has been used in many games, I did think that Pendragon would have gotten more traction given that it's from developer Inko, most famously behind the acclaimed titles 80 Days and Heaven's Vault. It's a narrative tactics title where you're gathering the Knights of the Round Table, rushing to aid Arthur in a battle against Sir Mordred. Interestingly, there are some roguelite elements with a randomized game board, and while it isn't quite as well received as the other games, it's still a step in an interesting direction, so looking to see what's next from them. The immersive sim is a genre that has captured the imagination of many throughout the years, with Wildfire, interestingly enough, bringing this into a 2D platformer space instead of the usual first person. You wield elemental magic and have to free the captive villagers as you fight against a villainous force, where the most interesting part is uncovering how the systems and elements react to each other in this. Now that I think about it, it has some of the same elements that makes me enjoy roguelites, so if you just love messing around with fire, ice and stealth elements, this is one to get. A series that was new to me despite already being in its third iteration is Ninth Dawn 3, an action RPG with a ton of stuff going on. It's an open world where you're free to explore, taking on quest objectives, visiting the various towns, delving into dungeons, and simply exploring. Many have likened this to old school Diablo and even Ultima, where there is an extensive crafting system down to having to mine your own resources, but additionally has a monster taming system where you can capture and train creatures to fight for you. There's even a fishing system and a card game, resulting in so many systems and so much content, not to mention hectic, epic combat, so it's a real steal for that kind of price. I do love my solitaire games, and a great entry is Ancient Enemy, coming to us from Grey Alien Games, who did also make similar titles such as Shadowhand and Regency Solitaire. If you watched my video on roguelite hidden gems, you will know that I do love RPG mechanics in a solitaire game like Solitarica, so this title got my attention, and in many ways is a no-nonsense one of these. Clearing cards gets you resources to cast spells and attacks to defeat your enemies, with an RPG leveling mechanic to round off the package. Roundguard can basically be described as roguelite Peggle, one of the earliest hits of PopCap games back in 2007, and I'm actually quite surprised to find that not too many Peggle or Pachinko-like games have been made since then. Instead of a ball, you're launching your hero into pots of gold, potions, enemies, and so on, mixing in special abilities at the right time, with some light meta progression elements, loot, multiple playable characters, and roguelite randomization per run, making it a hidden gem. I was looking forward to ITTA for a little while ever since I came to know of it, since it's a pixel art boss rush title, and having gotten hands-on, happy to report that it's a pretty great one of these, similar to games like Fury in some ways. You do have a number of different guns at your disposal, which will be needed to defeat the various bosses, and things do get pretty challenging pretty quickly, so you're in for a good time. PHOGS is a late entry this year, but managed to squeak in as well, being a wonderful, vibrant puzzle adventure game about a two-headed dog. It has you exploring the worlds of food, sleep, and play, so very dog things for sure, where the various elements that make up these worlds are just delightful. is cute and best with a friend as you work together to pass through hazards, so if you want something light-hearted, this is the game to get. Tribute Games is one of my favourite indie developers, so it was a shame that Panzer Paladin did not get more attention, since this 8-bit excellent title should not be missed. Piloting the Paladin power armor, travel the globe and defeat demonic invaders from space. The unique hook here is that enemies often drop weapons, which can be broken to activate a spell like healing or a fireball, and the loop of constantly picking up, using and breaking weapons is part of the flow of the game. There are out of armor sections as well, with the boss designs being a highlight, so if you just want some old school platforming fun, this is the title to get. Puzzle games often get short shrift as compared to their more actiony cousins, and it appears to be the case here with Filament, a simple looking puzzle game that has you wrapping filaments around columns, but the singular focus of this makes it a gem. If you enjoyed games like The Witness, this will certainly be of interest, and it is on 42% off during the Steam Winter Sale, so perhaps give it a shot. As mentioned in my last video, the open-ended puzzle Metroidvania, Elwa's Legacy is of interest, combining gorgeous art, clever puzzles and a wonderful sense of exploration which is critical for this genre. Don't want to labour on about the game, but if you do love this genre, you owe it to yourself to pick this up. I do love my tactics games, so of course, Tenderfoot Tactics caught my eye. It's a free-form open-world entry where you play as goblins fighting against a terrible fog and the creatures within. While the combat, interestingly enough, is fully deterministic, so no dice rolls or random factors, this also adds on terrain deformation which plays a part as well. Elemental magic and interactions are also in effect, so if you're just looking for a great tactics title, this is one to get. Renaissance paintings have experienced somewhat of a modern, renaissance, especially being used in memes, and a game with a similar feel is The Procession to Cavalry, the follow-up to Four Last Things from 2017. It self-describes as a Python-esque adventure, so expect the same sorts of absurd humour and comedy, and it's a beautifully done piece of interactive media due to the combination of art, writing and music. If you love challenging precision platformers, then one of the best of the year is Right, featuring your usual assortment of spinning blades and spikes, and having you collect a certain number of coins in each level to pass. that doesn't reinvent the wheel but feels great to play, so if you're up for a challenge, this is one to get. The Magical School RPG Iconfell is also one of the hidden gems, where you play as a group of magical students getting up to trouble with monsters and bosses lurking in the halls. On top of a wonderful pixel art style, is a story about friendship and love, with characters feeling unique and having good writing. The grid-based tactics combat is also pretty neat, where there are real-time active elements much like a Mario RPG. Another entrant that reminded me of a genre is Jet Lancer, being a side-scrolling aerial combat shooter similar to games like Love Rousers but with a different art style. What surprised me is that there have not been more standout entries in the space, where this game is a gorgeous one indeed, with one of the most satisfying combat and controls as you fly through the skies. There's a story mode and bosses to take out, so it's not just an endless or procedurally generated action title, and there's a lot more in that respect, but for looking this good, it gets a spot. One more turn-based tactics game makes the list, with Horizon's Gate, coming to us from developer Red Codex, with this being an evolution of their previous titles, Voidspire Tactics and Elvora Tactics. If you don't know, this is one of the best tactics developers in the game right now, with some comparisons being drawn to Final Fantasy Tactics, where this is an open world adventure where you're free to roam. There is a main quest to see through, and this is set in an original fantasy setting, so it's certainly worth experiencing if you love this genre. Another photography game makes the list with Umurangi Generation, set in a shitty cyberpunk future that was inspired by the creator's experience with the Australian bushfire crisis. It seems pretty authentic, creating an experience that rejects classical neon cyberpunk for something a lot more personal, coming to us from a Maori developer who infuses his own culture into the game. Umurangi is such a term, meaning red skies, seen in the apocalyptic shots that we have seen in and around California and in Australia, where the world building here is top-notch. It explores anti-capitalism themes of the inaction of government leaders and of the importance of socially conscious youth in this brave new world, perhaps being the go-to cyberpunk experience this year, taking the #1 spot. To see more of the big picture, check out these awesome videos, and I will see you after the jump.